Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two, and figuring out just what is going on is always a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we are finishing up Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones.
And if for some reason you're starting on this part instead of the first part, disclaimer in which I have read this book and watched this movie. So I didn't have any theories because I pretty much knew what was happening. Although, surprisingly, I forgot a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of things going on in this book.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to talk about the sort of theories I had by the end of the first half, and also maybe some theories I had during the second half that were also wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think sometimes the 50-50 split gets us a little bit in that, like, it's maybe too early sometimes, and I think that was a little bit true in this book, where there were some thoughts I had, like, kind of right after the 50-50 mark of, like, oh, what if it's this? What if it's that? So,
to be fair, I actually think it was kind of perfect in this book, because
yeah.
I think one of the funniest things you said in the first part was Sophie has to face off against the witch, but she doesn't have magic, so I don't know how she's going to do it.
That got disproven, like, right away.
Yeah. I was laughing to myself when you said that.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I understand, though, like, why you would think that, but reading it the second time, like I am, you definitely notice, right? With, like, all the hats and, like, everything she's talking to. It just makes sense.
I was feeling while I was reading it that this has a lot of second read value to it for things like that, especially just because of how much comes out in literally the last chapter, where it's like, oh, if I knew this stuff throughout the book, like, I would have read it totally differently.
Yeah, although, still didn't save me. Like, some of the stuff with the scarecrow and, like, whatever was happening with the dog, I forgot all of that, apparently.
Was that stuff in the movie or no?
The scarecrow is in the movie. Technically, there's also a dog in the movie, but, like, it's different.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, as mentioned, immediately we get the payoff for Sophie's magic, and she's pretty chill with it. She's pretty accepting of it.
Almost too chill, in my opinion. Where she's just like, oh yeah, like, I guess that makes sense. I'll accept this observation. Like, if I were told I was magical, I'd be like, what the, you know?
To be fair, like, obviously Letty and Martha are magic as well. Like, magic is pretty common here, but
that's fair.
The type of magic she has and, like, what she's already done, I think it should be more shocking. Yeah,
it's pretty different from the magic that's been established with, like, written spells and like the sort of stuff that Michael is up to, and that, I mean, presumably Howl too. Whereas, like, Sophie's just speaking things into existence.
Yeah. We get, like, a small hint, I think, in the first part where Calcifer mentions, like, there's belief magic, like, if you believe in something enough, it can be a type of magic.
Yeah.
Which Sophie kind of plays into when she makes the spells for the Port Haven house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Even though she's not intending for that to be the case, but, like, we do get a little bit of it. But
yeah, she's manifesting.
Yeah, it seems powerful as hell. Like, it's insane.
And it's so cool that she's the person who has it, because her whole character is almost lack of will and, like, lack of desire to change things, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that she can just kind of speak things into happening is so in contrast to what she believes she is, like, with the whole eldest daughter stuff and, like, feeling like a failure, all that.
Right. Which is, I mean, it's perfect for the journey she goes on throughout this.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good fit. So she only figures out about that magic, obviously, because Penstemon, I think I called her Persimmon in the first part because I literally could not remember her name, but close. What can you say?
It took me several listens because I was listening to the audiobook for a few more chapters, and then I pretty much switched to reading it, but I could not understand her name for several tries.
It's just something about it is difficult for my brain to comprehend, but
I get it.
Yeah, Penstemon is, like, Hal's old teacher and is the one that basically tells Sophie she's a witch. Sophie is going there as disguised as Howl's mother, but they don't believe any of that shit that's happening.
Yeah, not that Sophie knows that, right? Like, it seems like no one believes Sophie is anyone but herself.
Yeah. This whole Kingsbury situation, nothing really happens, but I guess some things happen. Meeting with the king doesn't really result in anything, right? Like, Sophie trying to blacken Hal's name doesn't really have much of an effect.
I kind of find myself wondering why they bothered with all of this part with the king, because Howl's just gonna do what he wants anyway.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But I think it wasn't so much about sending Sophie to the king, but sending Sophie to Penstemon, right? Because he says in the end he couldn't remove her spell, and he went to Penstemon to like ask her about it and see if she could remove the spell, but then that wasn't possible either. So
so like he used the king as a ploy to get her to Penstemon.
It's possible. Like you have to almost
casual.
Yeah, for Howl, everything is kind of there's always something different than what he intends originally, I think. Like he has to trick himself, and I think a little bit he also has to trick Sophie, right? Like getting her family all together is so that she won't get in trouble. Like he has to do things indirectly to get what he wants for her.
Right.
But yeah, this is basically like a nothing burger in regards to the king. The witch ends up killing Penstemon, which is wild.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It isn't talked about far too casually.
Yeah. Howl is obviously kind of in mourning, and I want to say pretty respectful. Like he makes it like an actual effort to go to her funeral and things like that. But still, he's not like breaking down because of it. But I'm like,
kind of got like a facetious nature talking about it with Sophie, and I don't know if that's because of his nature or just because he's talking to Sophie, you know? Like there's just like mild unseriousness.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with him. He's heartless, what can we say?
Right. Wow, I never caught that as like a hint when they call him heartless earlier in the book.
Oh, it's said so often as well.
I just didn't even think about it.
Calcifer says it like 5 times.
Yeah, and I remember we talked about this last episode too, of like, wow, like Calcifer really thinks like poorly of Howl for his behavior. I was like not thinking about him calling him heartless as like a matter of fact. I thought it was a matter of opinion, you know?
Yeah, it's so funny because it's like, I've given you a hint and I'm like, Howl's heartless, isn't he? And it's like me, I'm giving you a hint, John.
Yeah.
But moving on from Penstemon, for the most part, and everything that happened with that, and moving into things I guess we were both confused about. I'm going to be so honest, the dog situation still confuses me to this day.
Okay.
But there is a dog that shows up that was with Letty and is now sent to look after Sophie. So our family has grown to include this man that is disguised as a dog, I guess.
Yeah, casual.
And this dog does not like Howl, like at all.
Yeah, I thought it was wild that they let this dog stay around when we're in a state of heightened fear around the witch. And like every time the scarecrow approaches, we're like, we don't want anything to do with that. But like, wouldn't the dog be such a more sly, comfortable way to sneak something into Howl's home?
Yeah, like, I was honestly surprised it took Howl so long to figure out the dog was enchanted at all.
Yeah, because they seem to have this sort of sight about spells. And he even starts acknowledging it when he looks more closely.
I think it's just like, you could maybe take it as proof of his weakness, right? Like, it's Sophie's dog, right? So it's okay because it's Sophie's dog. And then Sophie might be more accepting of it because it was, like, sent by Letty, right? And Letty would never hurt Sophie. So why wouldn't she keep this man and try to help him, kind of, and not try to help him? It's not like she thinks she can do much in this situation.
It's like the same as the Calcifer contract at first, where she's like, I guess, like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I guess. Yeah.
And then there's also the matter of, like, Calcifer lets the dog in, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And Calcifer, there is, like, one person Calcifer was nervous to let in, but everybody else has been pretty chill. I guess also the Scarecrow has been a little questionable, but that's mainly because...
Mostly Sophie, though.
It's mostly Sophie that's been, like, terrified out of her mind about the Scarecrow. But, the dog... We'll deal with the dog.
Yeah, it becomes a whole story. I almost think he was introduced too early. Like, he just hangs around for a while.
Why do you think too early?
I guess because there's not really any active suspicion for a while. It's just kind of there. I don't know. I feel like there's no development portion with the dog. It's just an extra character who's around now. I guess he's like biting at Howl too, but honestly, like, what does that really resolve? Like, is he just biting at Howl because of his connection with Letty?
He's biting at Hal because Letty thinks Sophie is in danger because Hal
because of
asked
Hal.
about Sophie.
Yeah, so I'm not even sure that adds anything either then.
Mm-hmm. There is a great deal, I guess, in the second part that doesn't necessarily add much, I guess. Like, this is when, like, Hal gets sick and we kind of see insight into him and Sophie, I guess, getting closer. Like, he's being more honest and more vulnerable about certain things, and Sophie is kind of also figuring herself out during this part. I don't know.
I guess with that stuff, you see there's character development, right? I think that's the part that's missing with the dog is like, where's the development portion?
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Maybe it's tough because the dog isn't like, he's a man, but he's also not actually a man, right?
Mhm.
Like, he can't develop, I guess, full stop.
Right.
It does make for a very chaotic ending, though, when everything kind of gets undone at the same time.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like, I'm not against the dog being a character and like that sort of storyline existing. It's just the timeline of him entering and then just sort of casually being there for seemingly no reason. That's more of the part that bothered me about it. Not the whole storyline.
And that's fair. Yeah.
You mentioned Hal and Sophie's growing relationship. One thing that stuck out to me with that too is like him being sick all this time. I was like, I was partially asking a similar question of like, what is the point of him being sick, other than to like further establish his like vanity and whininess throughout. And like, I noticed that despite the fact that Sophie is learning more about Howl and maybe understanding him more, that she's still kind of rude to him all the time. Not that he doesn't bounce it back at her, but I was just thinking that as I kind of thought they would literally become closer, but I don't feel like they become closer. They just know each other more.
Interesting. Okay. I think they do become closer.
Say more.
I can. Just because like when the witch attacks again in Port Haven and they have to move and all of that stuff happens, all of the doors change, right? But before that happens, Hal asks for Sophie's opinion, right? Like, what do you want to sell in the shop? And what kind of, like, if you could have a door anywhere, like, where would you want it to be?
Right.
And so we get, like, Wales stays the same. We end up with the hat shop again in Market Shipping, but it turns into a flower shop because that's what Sophie wants. And then we get that nice house with the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
All that Sophie requests. And not even like directly. Like, it's not like he's asking her, where should I paint these doors to be? It's more like, what do you like, what do you want in general,
that's
right?
True. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's like a thoughtfulness in kind of both of them, more so in Hal, but like,
yeah,
even Sophie, she notes like the dog would get upset when he does have a name, by the way, but we'll just keep calling him the dog, I guess. The dog would get upset whenever Sophie would go and help Hal when he was sick, and like she is like taking care of him and kind of putting up with him, but there's a certain banter about them that still persists even with that thoughtfulness, and I don't think that means they're not close. I think that's just how their relationship works. Like, I think it's kind of sitcom, like this book was published, I think in the 80s or whatever, like it is kind of like old romantic husband and wife bickering, but still like thinking of each other kind of way.
I do see that with Hal and those actions. I feel like everything feels like it is done begrudgingly, though, right? Like it's I can see the sort of I was gonna say like enemies to lovers, but like it's not even that extreme, right? It's just there is like sort of this like tension or back and forth between them. But to me, from Sophie, like I don't get the sort of warm part of it. It feels like I'm doing this because it's like the most advantageous thing to be doing right now.
I see. I'm trying to think of like Sophie reciprocating. I don't know. She's like, in general, pretty caring, like as a baseline. Like we know it because of her sisters, but also when she cleans, she like doesn't kill Hal's spiders. She still hasn't cleaned his room. Like, she respected that space. And I don't know, I think she just wants him to be better is the problem, because
Right.
he does have to like trick himself into doing things, and she's very upfront. Like they have conflicting personalities in that way. He thinks too much, she doesn't think enough type of vibe.
Yeah. I definitely see that. Conflicting personalities is the right description.
Yeah, I think she does come across as like harsh because she wants him to do good things. So,
Yeah, I guess at the by the end of the book you kind of see it, right? Like she talks about him differently, but it's
mhm.
like sort of during this, yeah, like development, like sickness and I don't know, back and forth happening where I'm like, I felt like maybe I was supposed to get sold on them becoming closer this way, or like coming up to a point, like a breaking point or something like that. But I guess it didn't really feel like either of those ended up actually happening. Like there was maybe a point of realization for Sophie, but not so much like a reckoning.
Mm.
Actually, I disagree with that because there's something I'm going to bring up later that feels like a reckoning, but
Okay.
but it doesn't feel like it happens till the end as opposed to like slowly growing.
Oh, I see. Well, I guess that's just like a character flaw of her, right? Like her appearance is another thing that kind of coasts the whole time because she keeps believing a false narrative. Like she is very good at believing whatever she wants to believe in that moment, even if it's
Mhm.
not true. So
Yeah.
like I think there's a little bit of like her believing the worst in Hal, but as soon as who is it? Fanny is like Hal's wicked, he's gonna like eat your soul or something. She's like, well, that's not actually true. So
Hmm.
it's like I can be mean to him, but you can't be mean to him.
Yeah. Well, and that is a moment where I think her true thoughts are coming out, right? Like kind of
Mm,
like the King one, where she's like, "Oh, actually, he's not wicked. Like I haven't seen him do one wicked thing," which
yeah.
which is shocking because I feel like she has thoughts about the Miss Angorian situation. But otherwise, like, yeah, she's like, "Oh, like he makes good spells and like he's doing some Robin Hood action and like sees all the positive things, positive interactions that he has."
Yeah. It's just like easier to believe otherwise, I guess, right? Like
Yeah, and that's the thing she's trying to overcome, I guess, right? Like this idea that like perception is reality almost of like, oh, I
mhm.
believe things. Yeah, I guess it comes back to this. Like I believe things are this way, so they are this way.
Yeah. So yeah, I will agree like Hal is definitely more like is surprisingly more open in like his affections towards her. I think it's to the benefit of everyone that Sophie disregards all of that and pretends to hate his guts because obviously she's like the weakness for him, right?
Hmm.
Like at the end of the book. So it works out for them. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but I can see what you mean. I guess I'm also like benefiting from reading it all.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up, just because we briefly talked about the changing of doors to like locations. One thing I liked that Sophie experienced here was, since Hal kind of gave this to her, like was this ability to choose a path. Because I think up until this point, Sophie has done so little of that, aside from like choosing to come to the castle early on in the book. But like this idea that she could like do something she wants to do and like enjoy that thing. So
Mm-hmm.
choosing herself that, okay, I'm gonna choose that we do a flower shot. I don't want to do hats anymore, but like I'll do flowers, and like that they're able to find this like beautiful flower garden, and she kind of just is enjoying herself. And I think this is like the taste she needs, like kind of speaking of making the conditions right, like this is what she needs in order to understand that she can have direction of her own. Like she's not just subject to the forces of eldest daughterhood. Like she can actually decide like, oh, I want to choose not to fail, and I want to like make decisions that make me happier. So I kind of liked that as an experiment for her to grow a little bit.
Yeah, I think she notes it's like the happiest she's ever been,
Hmm.
but like she's still not completely happy. Because there is almost, I don't know if irony is the right word, but this is like her family shop, right? And obviously she's remade it into something that's hers, but she still feels exceedingly disconnected from her family because
Right.
she won't reach out to them.
Yeah, kind of halfway there.
Yeah, finding her path in one direction, but like still being very stagnant in another, kind of.
Yeah, and that's like a whole other thing she has to contend with. Like she gains some shame about her old age appearance after some time that she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily start out with. And I think it's she had to go through some of this experience to feel that way, where she's like, no, actually, like I do desire closeness with my sisters, and like now I actually, because of that, care a little bit more about what they would think of what I'm doing with my life.
Right, exactly. Which is like an interesting switch. We see a little bit of that also with like Miss Angorian, her like comparing her appearance to her, even her like younger appearance. She's like, I'm never gonna compare to Miss Angorian because I mean, jealousy arc. What can you do?
Yeah.
But it's such a difference from the beginning where she looks at herself and is like, this is who I truly am, which only enforces the spell put upon her, by the way.
Right.
And then now it's like, you know, I wish I looked like myself. I wish I could see my family again and they would see me, and like, you know, all of this.
Mm-hmm.
The appearance spell is like the most subtly broken spell, I think, throughout this book. Because it's not like a big moment that it even ends.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, there's just a moment where I think you need to assume that she looks like herself again. I think it's because like Hal starts talking about her hair. And I was like, oh, okay, so I guess she's back.
Yeah, it's like so small. Yeah, it's just like a lot of little moments culminating in like her finally becoming herself. But yeah, this is for sure the flower shop is a large step for her in that direction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The only downside, I guess, of the flower shop at the moment is Calcifer is feeling very lonely because of it, because he's kind of left. Technically, I think he's physically in Market Chipping now. Or is he in the castle? I can't remember.
Oh, actually, that's a good question. I thought the point was that they were moving into Market Chipping.
That's what I thought too, because they used to be in Port Haven, and now I think they're in Market Chipping.
Also, like, I didn't really expect the move to look the way it did.
Oh?
It's silly me for like thinking he would have to like leave the castle and like be put somewhere, but no, they just like made a pentagram and like did some weird witchy stuff, and then it was done.
Yep, simple as.
Like, okay.
So yeah, Calcifer is feeling lonely, and he's like stuck right to the hearth. He can't leave because of the contract, and we start, I don't want to say working towards solving that, because Sophie is kind of hesitant to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
But we do basically figure out what the contract is, because when the witch was attacking Calcifer is described as having like starry silver eyes, and I don't know if you understood.
Right over my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not catch.
But thankfully, Sophie caught it and asked if he had ever been a shooting star.
Yeah, thankfully she did, because then I was like, oh.
Yeah. So yeah, the contract basically, he can speak on parts of it now because she's asked that question, and shooting stars are destined to fall and they die, and that's like kind of how it goes. But Calcifer was afraid, and Hal felt sorry for him, so the contract is basically a way to keep Calcifer alive, quote unquote alive the way humans stay alive. And I mean, did you know it?
Not get that.
Okay.
No. Like, not that the line didn't stick out to me, but I definitely didn't get the heart passing on thing, like, as what that means. Like, I just thought it was, what's the word? Like, oh God, why am I blanking on it? Like a sweet nothing, you know, like a like comforting words, almost like euphemistically describing, which I guess it was euphemistically describing what had really happened in a way where I was like, I didn't dig into it too much.
I see.
Unfortunately, I think that was the mistake, but
I mean, that's fine. I'm like, I have a buff. I knew the answer.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, we know what the contract is, but Sophie still isn't sure if she wants to break it, because I mean, what happens if you stop a contract that's keeping one half alive?
Right.
What happens to Calcifer? And then also, what happens with the fight against the Witch of the Waste? Like,
right. And also, Hal mentions too when they're moving Calcifer that he's like at risk if Calcifer dies too.
Yes, although I should mention, like, Sophie does not really bring up Hal in that regard, I think, during this part. She does
Hal,
not give a fuck. But yeah, Sophie and Calcifer, my duo. I love them.
Throwback to the first half when I was like, it's Sophie and Calcifer. They're the pairing.
I mean, Sophie has two hands.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I did like their bond a lot.
Yeah, they're sweet. So yeah, that's the contract. Again, Sophie doesn't do much in regards to it, we at least know what's happening, but with everything else happening in this book, we are going to wait until the very end to solve all of these problems.
We're going to solve them all at once.
Yeah. And we're kind of just dealing with, like, the Witch of the Waste situation still, because we still have that curse going on, right? More of it is falling into place in regards to, like, the mermaids, and Hal mentions the envy sting being kind of about Wales and his family. He also gets white hair at some point, or close enough. And then Sophie ends up magically growing like a mandrake root.
Yeah, they should have called this one when they made the flower shop, though.
I know.
That was kind of stupid of all of them.
The weird thing about this is it's not really like a curse. Like, there's no effect, really. It's more like a path.
Yeah, an order.
Yeah. It's really just leading them to what the end of this book is.
Right.
And Hal still thinks he's safe as long as he's dishonest.
I just think this is a funny feature because, like, there's a number of times throughout the book where he's asked a question and just doesn't answer the question. Particularly if it seems like he's being called out a little bit by Sophie of, like, oh, like, you're going to see that girl or whatever, you know? He'll just, like, not respond, which I just kind of thought had to do with it being Sophie prying, but I wonder how much of that has to do with, like, I don't want to give you an honest answer to this question, so I'm just not going to answer it at all.
It's probably both. Sophie is pretty nosy.
Yeah. No, I think it probably is both too. Like,
yeah.
It's part of the character he's keeping up. I think I had a lot more thoughts about his sort of personality being dictated by the curse than there ended up being, but I think in some ways this is a result of the curse, of, like, him having a sort of layer between him and reality, so that way he can't be manipulated by the curse, or so that way he can try to dodge the curse. I think, like, some of his sort of standoffishness comes from that.
Yeah, he's also just such a man with commitment issues. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't really want anybody to rely on him for anything, which is, like, the whole why he gets his name blackened and things like that. Because, yeah, you just don't want to be responsible for people, I guess.
Right.
Especially when you're at, I guess, an emotional disadvantage.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if he doesn't have a heart and he can't, truly...
Fair.
Yeah. If he believes he can't truly care for people, then, like, there is kind of that separation he's always going to have.
Yeah, I guess it does come back to the heart. It's so funny because he is collecting people along the way, though, right? Like, he starts with Calcifer, and that's where this all originates, so sure, maybe that doesn't count. But then he does, like, let Michael stay, and then he lets Sophie stay. Like, I don't know, he clearly has something going on.
I have so much to say about that. Yeah. It is interesting, though, if you look at the difference between, like, Calcifer and then Michael and Sophie, right? Because it's like, Calcifer's is almost like, it's an offer, like a clear offer, right? It's a contract, something spoken between them and, like, signed. But for Michael, it's like, I opened the door and you came in and then you stayed, and that was that, right? And
right.
Sophie, like, he doesn't really say anything about it either. So it's like there is kind of like a shift in that openness, like that vulnerability he has in regards to the connections he makes with people. Right. Calcifer kind of ends up acting as his heart in a lot of these situations, right?
You know what? That makes a lot of sense in hindsight when we think about how Calcifer is kind of the gauge for, like, if someone should stick around, or, like, you know, like, how respects Sophie kind of because she connects with Calcifer. And, like, at the end of the day, that's his heart in there. So, like, I think that's such an interesting way, just like an interesting way to display connection between people, where it's like Calcifer, I don't know if I want to say it this strongly, but it's like Calcifer represents true Howl in a way.
Yeah. And I think that could also be said about the bad things about Hal too, like, because Calcifer is a fire demon at the end of the day, and I think Hal is also quite vain and selfish, and he slithers out of things, as Sophie knows. Like, I think,
outer.
Yeah, I think all of those things are still true. So there is something not demonic, but, like, close enough. Whatever.
Right. It's got some vices.
Yeah, if somebody can come in and see, like, a demon and interact with it truly and, like, openly and not care about those things, then it's like somebody like Hal, who's also kind of standoffish and, like, a little bit dark kind of and annoying, you could probably get along with them too.
Yeah, good point.
So surprisingly, this might be where the episode gets complicated, if it wasn't already quite complicated, because this is kind of the end is what we're going to talk about now. which is when everything happens.
I remember getting to the beginning of the last chapter, knowing it was the last chapter, and being like, how do we know so little still?
It truly is the very, very end.
And it is a long chapter compared to the others. Like, it's not particularly long for a chapter in any given book, but it is, I think, the longest chapter in this book.
Because we have actually, the dog stuff might be slightly before this, when the dog becomes Percival. But, like, the untangling, I guess, of what that means. We kind of talked about some of it, but we know because of Howl that Percival is, like, multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
That was enchanted to be a dog, ended up with Letty. Letty sent it to Sophie. Howl was asking Letty about Sophie for some reason. And it's just a mess. Nothing can be done at this moment with the dog.
I also love that his name is Percival, and he likes to use Pendragon as the last name. Like, it's like, okay, lots of little Arthur Knights of the Round Table references.
Very British. Very British.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like, how obviously can't do anything about Percival right now, but he does note, like, he's going to solve it tomorrow at some point. I can't remember exactly what he says. But he does say he's going to figure out the situation for
Even
Percival.
Though he seems to know, like, there's all this other stuff going on, though. I was like, what if you are not alive tomorrow? Because of the Witch of the Waste, you know?
Well, I think this was him, like, I might be assuming on my part, but, like, him knowing who Percival was, kind of. And then being
yeah,
like...
that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm going to have to face off against the witch, and so I will solve this Percival problem.
And then he still goes and gets drunk.
I mean... We're here for a good time, not a long time.
Apparently, yeah.
But that's also kind of like maybe an accidental moment of honesty. Like, I'll figure it out, instead of him, like, trying to escape the situation. He's just kind of like, he knows. He knows he's going to have no choice at this point, so you might as well be honest about it. But that's me assuming. And then somehow this house gets even more full and complicated.
Chaotic.
Yeah, when we have... Fanny shows up to the mansion, specifically, because it's been redone, and it's all nice now for Sophie. I guess we should mention, Sophie also wants to leave at this point. Like, she's fed up.
Yeah, she's, like, upset. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's really upset because, like, Michael and Hal were, like, listening in on her conversation, and, like, she just doesn't feel like it's worth staying. I don't know. She's sick of things at this point.
It's just built up. The tension is increased to the maximum for her.
Yeah.
But I still think it's silly. She had mentioned wanting to leave earlier in the book, and I was like, whatever. Like, why now?
It's kind of like she wants to leave, but also she's using any excuse to stay type of thing. The Scarecrow plays a big part into that when he keeps showing up. And then this is also, like, her family ends up showing up first with Fanny, who, like, I think immediately recognizes her, because it turns out her entire family knows she's been, like, cursed by the Witch of the Waste.
Which, like, upsets her more, I think.
Yeah. But she was basically hiding from them for no reason, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I liked her interaction with Fanny here, too, because she seems to have, like, a very adult understanding of Fanny suddenly, right? Of, like, oh, like, I thought she was just... I mean, not that she wasn't taking advantage of Sophie, but, like, I thought she was like, I just thought that's all it was. But, like, really, she was just, like, trying to live her life and having a bad time. Yeah,
because at the beginning, we have Sophie, like, thinking quite highly of Fanny, and then Martha is like, actually, Fanny's the devil.
Right.
You shouldn't, like, get along with her. And we're like, whoa, Martha.
Yeah.
And then Fanny comes back and is like, oh my gosh, I've missed you. Like, you disappeared. Like, that's insane.
And that crossed my mind too. I'm like, it must have been crazy when she disappeared.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And then, like, she figures out Martha and Letty switched and is like, I'm happy for them. Like, she really was trying her best in the same way that Sophie was, right? Like, they both believed this lie about destiny and, like, the firstborn and all of this kind of stuff. But, yeah, Fanny's just a girl. She's just a girl.
Yeah, exactly, though.
And then we end up getting the entire Hatter family with Martha coming because of Michael. And then Letty ends up coming with Mrs. Fairfax. And so they're reunited with Percival. And it's a full house. It's a full house. And then there's also when Miss Angorian shows up as well. She showed up once before, but like Sophie kicked her out and Calcifer didn't want her there, so it was like a weird situation.
They were pretty rude. I mean, Sophie was pretty rude to her. I was like, wow, this is a lot.
I mean, to be fair, if somebody just walked into my house, I'd be like, get out. Like, what are you doing in
Sophie
here?
did the same thing.
Well, fair.
When she showed up the first time. So I was just, I mean, which she does go on to compare herself to her, but I'm like, it's so funny for you to treat her this way. Like, you are the same.
That's so, yeah, okay, you got me.
Obviously, there's more context later on, especially with Calcifer, like, seeming to know something we don't, but, like, other than that, I'm like, Sophie's being a bit much.
Yeah. And it's so funny because Hal wants her to do that, right? It's like, I wanted you to be jealous enough to keep her out of the house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, damn, he clocked her there, huh?
Not these games, though.
I know. But the second event of her showing up, it isn't as successful. She does kind of come in and she kind of hangs around a little bit, and then she ends up at the flowers at the edge of the waist. Kind of gets left there. I don't know. They're spinning the door a lot. So
yeah, I guess it's like made up to be an accident, but like in hindsight, was it? Like, I think maybe she could have done that on purpose. Like, ended up in the wrong door on purpose.
Yeah, I'd believe that. Also, the Scarecrow ends up showing up as well. Finally, the last piece we needed. And this, I think, also happens in the first part, but I didn't note it because I'm a fool. But when the Scarecrow shows up, the guitar and the skull end up, like, going off.
I at least remember the skull, yeah.
Yeah, the skull, like, chattering and stuff like that. Obviously having some kind of reaction. And so the Scarecrow takes the skull. We find out it's a golem that was sent to find certain parts, because the skull belongs to Wizard Solomon, and so does the guitar. That's why they're reacting that way. And the golem was sent by Wizard Solomon to find, like, his missing pieces or whatever. So, like, that's why the tracking spell the prince used didn't work, because the wizard was all separated and stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even make that connection, but that's like how he ends up in these various locations.
Yeah. And then Percival ends up being part of the prince. I think part prince, part Solomon,
part Solomon.
Other people, maybe? I don't really know.
They said at least 3, from what I remember, yeah.
A few people.
But the only ones that matter, I guess, to us are Justin and Solomon.
Yeah. And the Scarecrow notes that, like, it would have died early on if Sophie hadn't, like, spoken life back into it. Mm-hmm. So that's the complicated situation of the Scarecrow and the dog, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like it only gets more complicated from here, so...
I don't know, does it? I feel like it's not so bad.
I have some confusions about the whole witch Angorian thing that's coming up.
Fair. So yeah, Angorian ends up being taken by the Witch of the Waste, apparently. That's what we hear. Mm-hmm. And Sophie blames herself, kind of, and decides to go by herself.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. I think before this, or maybe during, the Witch of the Waste also attacks Hal's family in Wales.
Oh yeah, that was kind of horrifying.
Yeah. It's also like a weakness he kind of left open on purpose so that he would have to confront the Witch of the Waste. Like, it was intentional, as crazy as that sounds.
That does sound, I'm like, wow, you really put your family at risk. But I guess I didn't necessarily read it that way either, but that's kind of what it feels like now. Like, I read it as like he felt like he could kind of dangle it in front of the witch and they wouldn't really be at risk, though clearly they were at some risk. But like, I think that's what it came off as when he was talking about why he set it up this way. It sounded like, oh, I like didn't think like she could actually get to them.
Fair. I mean, that makes sense too, because he wasn't expecting her to go through Wales for the curse either.
Right.
Like, that was a surprise. And then I think he also knows, like, this isn't the actual weakness. Like, obviously he cares about his family, but the actual problem is Sophie thinks it's Angorian is, like, the actual bait, but obviously it's Sophie herself. Yeah. So him being busy with the witch, Angorian being gone, Sophie going after the Witch of the Waste. It's a lot of problems here. And Sophie doesn't stand much of a chance against the witch.
Yeah, that became clear pretty quickly.
Yeah, she gets captured pretty quickly. She does try to escape on her own, but it's, like, not really worth much. She doesn't really magic yet at this point.
Right. It's giving, like, don't try to save someone who's drowning if you don't know how to swim.
Fair, yeah. But we figure out what the big plan is, which is insane. I feel like it kind of comes out of left field.
It is insane too. Like she's like, I'm gonna like stitch people together basically to make my like perfect king partner man.
Yeah. And that's why she has Ben and the prince, and then she wants Howl's head, and it'll be perfect. And they'll rule together.
Crazy.
Insane. And the witch is taken down pretty easily.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that was kind of it. I was expecting a little bit more hullabaloo, but I guess the scarecrow is a real plus.
Yeah. Also, there's something very cool about like I feel like we're skipping over like the imagery of this place a lot, but the Witch of the Waste's like fortress, I guess, being just these chimneys because of her fire demon is like very cool. Like in the middle of the desert, like there's something kind of tough about that.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. It's cool.
Yeah.
Also, like visuals, like we didn't get into the battle that they have in the harbor.
Yeah.
Earlier in the book, but that was also like kind of fun to read. Like it didn't feel like there was a lot of plot happening, but I was like, yeah, cool, this is like a fun battle, you know?
Yeah, like it's all illusions, right?
Yeah.
Like trying to trick each other and like chase each other, and like it makes sense for the curse the Witch of the Waste is using and the way that Howl kind of circumvents situations. Nothing is ever exactly direct.
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, the Witch of the Waste is taken down quite easily. We do figure out that her and her fire demon kind of aren't together anymore. Something has happened, whatever. So that becomes the problem, right? Hal and Sophie, of course, argue a little bit, and he looks like garbage as he's fighting for her. I think it's also important to note.
Yeah, because he looks all pretty all the other times.
Yeah, and the only time when he would skip out on, his appearance and getting ready would be if he ever was truly in love, right? We know that from the first part.
Yeah, that's true. Like Michael says the whole thing of, the moment he forgets to spend 2 hours showering, then I'll know like someone's finally got him,
And then they end up riding a wind back to the castle.
Also kind of badass.
Yeah, so cool. And the honesty between them is nice. I guess what's more important for what we should talk about is the fact that Angorian is actually the fire demon this whole time.
This is, I'm going to be honest, the part of the book that made the least sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, I will say when I was reading it, in my notes, I was like, I feel like something is up with Angorian. Like, I remember something about her being off, but I couldn't remember why.
Part of what I was thinking about with this part of the book was like, is this even literally the same Angorian as the one that we came across in Wales? Or is this like fire demon dressed up as Angorian? Because we've had a lot of disguise in this book. And so I was like, are they using Angorian's image to like complicate the story? And like that never gets addressed. So I assume not. But like that's the only thing that made it make sense to me, because I was like, why would it be to the level that like this fire demon is his nephew's teacher? And like that, it brings in questions too of like, what is the actual relationship between her and Solomon, and like did Solomon actually come from Wales? And I don't know, just like all of that doesn't like make sense to me anymore with Angorian not being who we thought she was.
Yeah, I could see it from like an interest perspective, like kind of like bait. If he doesn't know yet that she's a fire demon, then like her being connected to Wizard Solomon while he's trying to find Wizard Solomon is like something, right?
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't get explained or anything like that. And then the poem part, I could see the fire demon posing as the teacher, not necessarily like for years or something, but like for a short period of time, so that the poem ends up with Howl, because the poem is the curse, right? So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's like not totally unintelligible. It's just like there was some shakiness to it for me. That's all.
And you don't really suspect anything the entire time, so I can understand why it'd be strange. I mean, I'm reading it again, and I completely forgot this even happened, so.
Yeah. This is one thing that made the book feel cut too short, other than like how literally fast everything was going at the end of it, that there wasn't like a simmer down. But like I also did want more of like a clear explanation of this sort of part of it.
I wonder if it was partly like long con though, like because Angorian's goal is to get Hal's heart specifically, right? Like the plan is obviously different than the Witch of the Wastes, who wants like his head or whatever. So like if Angorian can get close enough to Hal, like romantically, I suppose, and get into the house and get to Calcifer, then like that's the thing, right? Like that's what you want. So it might just be a difference in goals.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, this is a confrontation that actually Sophie is the one that saves the day for this one instead of Hal, because Hal basically becomes unconscious when Angorian has his heart, and Sophie is able to use her magic to attack Angorian with her stick, and everybody kind of rallies to help her, like help Sophie in this moment. And we figure out, finally, why Sophie is the one that has to break this contract between Calcifer and Hal. Because Calcifer will die if he loses the heart, right? Like, if the contract is broken.
To which I say, though, the contract could have been broken anyway. They need Sophie specifically to break the contract while Calcifer can also remain alive, is how I interpret it. But hypothetically, they could break the contract and let Calcifer die.
Yes, yeah. But, like, that sucks.
Yeah. I'm just like, if we're picking battles here, like it's either that or become like the witch of the moving cat, or the wizard. I say the witch, but gendered terms, whatever. But like to become the evil wizard of the moving castle instead,
Yeah, and I would be curious to see like if they'd be willing to make that sacrifice eventually. But it's like, I don't know if I want to say a good coincidence that Sophie is there. I guess I don't know. Fate is weird in this book. I don't know if it actually exists or not.
Yeah.
But they're lucky that Sophie is there, I suppose, because she can talk life into things. So she can give Calcifer more time and then also fix Hal's whole heart situation. And that's like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This fell flat in one way for me. I think it was mostly fine, but just in one angle, in that I thought there was going to be like more to it as far as the terms for like breaking the contract. But really it wasn't like terms. It was really just like someone had to know what the, like, kind of do the sleuth work to figure out what had happened and then just undo it.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more of a like conditions need to be met kind of thing.
Like very hero's journey.
Yeah.
Like, typical. Okay.
I mean, and like that maybe is the most extreme version of it, but like something. I thought there would be a thing,
And it's not like she's like crafting a spell in this moment. So it's like, yeah, you really just need to find the right person.
Yeah.
Is like the object you're looking for is just Sophie in this case.
Right.
But I get what you mean. It's kind of like we kind of coast on the contract for a long while, and then it's like we're gonna break it right now. It's like, oh, okay.
I think it's the reason I feel this way too is like it's one of those things where I want that to be a mystery of the book, right? It's like I want to be like, oh, are there clues? Like, are there things to figure out? And it's like, not really. Yeah, like we just need to know what it is, and then that's enough. Which, like, there was something to that too. Like, we did have to figure out exactly how this came to be, how the contract came to be, in order to undo it. Like, there wasn't nothing. Just wasn't the style I thought it was going to be in, but that doesn't mean it was like bad or not well done or something like that.
Yeah, there's not exactly like much sleuthing, much mystery in this. It's kind of just chill, kind of cottagecore fantasy vibes. I don't know. But yeah, we kind of get that chill end to this book where Sophie is back to herself, and crazy shit just happened. So obviously everybody's like, "What the fuck? What are we talking about?"
Yeah, a lot of buzz.
And Hal and Sophie are just kind of talking to each other, kind of arguing a little bit, bantering, having a good time. And it's like they're in their own world, and the only thing that makes them like stop and like tune back in is when Calcifer comes back. Because Calcifer is a star again, he can leave, and he does leave, but he comes back because, it's raining and market shipping, so...
Yeah, because he did just kind of suddenly dip, and I was like, oh, wait, is that it? Like, Calcifer's gone?
Yeah.
I do think at the core, like, Calcifer and Hal are friends, and I just think that this thing has gotten in the way of that, right? Like, the contract got in the way of their friendship and was sort of darkening their own individual lives, too. And, like, now that that's gone, like, I think they can lean more back into friendship, right? Like, Calcifer's like, well, now that I can choose to come back, then, like, yeah, I'll choose that. Because he actually does enjoy it.
Right, I agree. Yeah. It's about the choice of it all, right? And that's kind of been the case for all of the characters. Yeah, so that was a very chaotic recapping of everything that happened, but this is a pretty chaotic book. Definitely a second read kind of book.
Mhm.
It went much easier this time for me.
I definitely think I would enjoy a second read down the line.
Yeah. And so we can probably just get into ratings. Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think I had fun reading the book. Good fantasy vibes. There were a few moments where like I kind of talked about throughout this episode of like where story didn't land exactly the way I thought it might. I don't want to be too harsh because I don't think it was like those moments were bad. I just think it didn't align with expectation, which are different things, you know. But because of that, like I did find it a little harder to like latch on to some parts in the second half of the book. And like really was like left wondering what was going on until that very last chapter, and just like not with enough like story points for me to be like, I think it's going to be this in the last chapter, or like I really want this thing to happen. And that was like the only part that was like missing for me, is just like wanting to grab onto something a little bit more before that last section of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, like, yeah, easy to read, good time. I think as far as star rating, I think I'm going to do a 3.5.
Okay.
With the idea that I bet you if I read it again, it would go higher. But that's what I'm feeling right now.
Okay, that's fair. For myself, I will say my first rating of this book is going to be the same as this rating for this book. My opinion has not changed. I'm perhaps just more thoughtful about what I appreciate about this book.
Mm-hmm.
We brought it up a little bit discussing this. Like, there is just something exceedingly cozy about this book that makes me not mind all of the chaos at the end and all the things like that might not make sense. I'm like, whatever. Because even if nothing is necessarily happening, this is like just a feel good character, like relationship type book. And romance hater than I am, like I do get it. Like Sophie and Howl, I do get it. And I'm here for it, right? Mm-hmm. And also just like the family relationships, the platonic relationships, like I love all of them in this book. And I think it's very interesting. We talked about it before, but like the way Howl kind of has made this place for people to belong, right? Like for Calcifer and for Michael, for Sophie. And all of those people also just wanted somewhere to belong, right? Like they were all kind of lost. Calcifer literally dying, and they needed some place to call home, and that is this moving castle, right? It's all of these places that are, you know, in different locations, but the location doesn't matter so much as like the people inhabiting that space. And I'm always a sucker for those kinds of things. So it's a 5-star for me.
I figured. I figured that's how we ended up reading this book to begin with, so.
Yeah. They're just so good.
If I could respond to something that you brought up in your discussion there, the one thing that I say the one thing, another thing that didn't land for me was the romance, because they just kind of hold hands at the end and you're like, oh yeah, I guess they're like doing the thing, you know? But it didn't, maybe because of what I discussed of like feeling a lack of build in their relationship, and like, at least in my opinion, like that didn't hit for me, that's where that was going. Like I almost felt like what I feel you say sometimes about other books, where I'm like, they could just be friends, you know, like they could just figure out, you know, their relationship is growing. Maybe it ends up there later down the line, but by the end of this book, I'm not there yet.
I think that's fair. Like, I think Hal is a lot more understandable, as we've talked about. Sophie is definitely more slow in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she has like the moment where her family comes and like the honest wind, and it's like, oh, maybe I do actually care about Hal. But I think you're right. It could just be the beginnings of romance. It doesn't necessarily have to be like they're engaged, they're married, like all of that kind of nonsense. But like for me, that's still good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Them holding hands, like I don't need them to do anything more than that. Like that is peak. That's peak for me.
Right. That's like the appropriate amount of romance for where we're at.
Yeah.
I would be down to do a good vibes. I know you just kind of gave it glowing reviews, but I would like to throw a bit of positivity its way.
Okay.
I think Sophie's story in particular stuck out to me as like a really positive part of this book. We got into character journey for her in both parts discussing this book, and I just think, kind of finding her way to I guess, better self-image, but also just like self-determination and finding her interests and really thinking about what happiness means for her. Like that whole journey I thought was really, really cool. And especially like if this is, if this is really intended for kids to read, which I think to a degree it is a children's fantasy. So I think that's like a good message to have in a book like this. That's kind of like fantastical and weird. That like the main character is like going through this sort of self-growth throughout it.
For sure. Yeah. So that is Howl's Moving Castle. I don't know if I want to call this a success yet. I'm still editing the first part of this.
Yeah, the one-sided 50-50.
Yeah.
It adds a whole new meaning to 50-50 though. 50% of us read the book before.
Oh, fair. But still, it might be fun to do something like this again.
Yeah, I had a good time with it.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to read this book. I don't know.
Yeah.
And why have a book podcast if you're going to stop yourself from reading books, right?
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens in the future. And then for next month, it is June again. So, of course, we're thankfully returning to some queer literature.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and we're reading The Drowning Summer by C.L. Herman. Up to, but not including, chapter 18.
There's like a mystery vibe, right?
Yeah, it's like a mystery vibe. There were some murdered teenagers. But there's also paranormal, because apparently we're summoning ghosts here. So, yeah, some fantasy, some paranormal, some mystery. I feel like I've had this book on our podcast list since we started the podcast, so I'm excited to read it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm excited for it too.
Yeah, I've always been waiting for summer, though, because it has to fit. And obviously, if you have your own thoughts and theories about Howl's Moving Castle, book or movie, we'll take either. Or The Drowning Summer, which we're doing next. All of our socials are in the description, and then there's also reviews, comments, blah, 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 blah. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.